broadcasting from the Unshackled studios in Melbourne. This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net. Now here's Tim Wilms.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to WilmsFront for 2024. On this Sunday, the 14th of January, we are broadcasting live on the WilmsFront YouTube channel, the WilmsFront Odyssey channel, but unfortunately, and there's always on the first show back, there can be a few issues. Haven't been able to get Rumble to work tonight, but I'll be uploading the live replay, and hopefully it'll be back ready tomorrow night for the first Tim's News Explosion for 2024. Hope you all had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It is 9 p.m. here in Melbourne, Victoria. I enjoyed my interstate trip to South Australia and stay in Adelaide, even though I was on leave with no shows broadcast. I was assisting our senior editor, Damien Ferri, publishing the nomination list for our annual Unshackler Awards for 2023, which is a series of 10 awards to remember the good and the bad of the previous year, with the winners announced on Australia Day. It's been a tradition since the founding of the Unshackled, since 2016. Damien and I are the two remaining originals from the first Unshackled editorial team, and he's always a WilmsFront favorite. So I thought I would invite him on to launch the program and the Unshackled productions for the year. So to announce the nominees of the Unshackler Awards. Damien, welcome to WilmsFront for the year.
Thanks for having me, Tim. It should be a really exciting show. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to cover, and this is actually the eighth award show that we actually got from 2016 now to the 2023 awards, which is the latest one. So the 8th award show that's going to be done, and we're going to be posting the results obviously on Australia Day as we normally do. So there's still a lot of time for people to get their votes in, and yeah, looking forward to it.
And so we founded the Unshackled in September 2016, which was 2 months before Trump won the 2016 presidential election. And I remember at the time we were all being told it's unlikely, but we all remembered it feeling that it was just going to happen, that Trump was going to win, and he did.
Yeah, I had a really good feeling about it. I mean, as soon as he came as a candidate, when he put his name forward and he had that speech, that infamous speech, I actually thought to myself, I reckon he has a really good chance of winning this, like going all the way. Despite all of the polls, all of the people that were doubting him, even within his own ranks, I really thought that he had what it took, and he had the right ideological belief that he was going with, the right policies he was pushing, and he really tapped into that sentiment of patriotism that was really gaining ground. It was a time where people were really being let down by elites, and he was the candidate to really have started it all. I mean, we want to go back. I mean, he wasn't the first patriotic candidate or nationalist type of candidate. Obviously, we've had someone like Pauline for now 30 years. But in modern time, he definitely led a resurgence of that kind of ideological way of thinking. So after that, obviously, we had him, we had Brexit, everything one after the other just basically flowed. And there has been a resurgence of that type of ideology.
Though he did lose, in quotation marks, the 2020 presidential election, there was the black swan event of the COVID pandemic. Joe Biden, who campaigned from his basement, he managed to convince or con the American people that I'm going to take you back to normal times. Though fast forward 4 years later, Trump is not just leading in the Republican primaries, but also head to head in a rematch with Biden because, well, it's the same issue that is front and center than when Trump won in 2016, illegal immigration. And they're flooding all the sanctuary cities now, like New York and Chicago. It is just basically, I mean, it's a full on, well, would you call it an invasion though? If like the southern border is not being guarded, they're just flowing over.
Well, I'm actually glad it's actually at least affecting the Democrat-held areas now. So there is a flow-on effect. It's starting to get the left realizing that this whole approach of open borders may not be the best thing. I mean, we have the same similar issue here that we have West Sydney, for instance, particular areas that get flooded, but then the upper-class suburbs hardly get this effect. And that's why it's very easy for them to be preaching a diverse culture, bring people in, no borders. But the people that are in those areas that are calling the shots aren't actually getting the negative consequences from those actions. And this is the problem here. I mean, if they get a bit of a taste of their own medicine, then that's the only way they will realize that it might not be good for the country. Unfortunately, it has to actually affect them for them to realize that.
And you mentioned that 2016, the populist upsets aligned. And it seems like that the stars could align in 2024. Obviously, in Australia, there was the overwhelmingly convincing defeat of the Aboriginal voice referendum, and then 2023 finished off well with Geert Wilders' Party for Freedom, number one in the Netherlands, and Javier Milei elected president of Argentina. And so the omens are good for a 2024 Trump second term.
I think it's looking good. I would really be surprised if the Democrats win because the last 4 years have been really shocking. They're really, like Ron Nielsen says on the comments, imagine what Chicago and New York would look like right now. I mean, that's definitely this is the thing. It really has to affect those areas for people to swing in their votes. I mean, it's all well to have Republican areas continuing to vote Republican, but you have to have people that are at least not on the far left, but just on the center, even slightly on the left that are a little bit more old-fashioned left and not so much into the wokeness, for them to see that the left these days don't represent what the left used to represent. And a lot of old people, especially, if you actually ask them if they would agree with a lot of the left's policies, and didn't even mention if it was a Labor policy or a Democrat policy, for instance, they would say, no, I don't support that. But then come election time, they still vote for that because that's the Workers' Party that they used to vote for, 50 years ago. And this is the problem when you have that kind of mentality. A lot of it is even transferred from generation to generation. And people have to really start thinking for themselves and seeing, okay, what are these people believing in? What are they preaching? Not just so much what they say they stand for, but what's actually happening on the ground. Because, I mean, what have the Democrats in America done for working class and poor people? I mean, there's more and more poor people in America than there ever was before. You see people in 10 cities over there, and we might not have that kind of effect here in Australia as of yet, luckily, but I mean, we're still doing it tough here with the inflation challenges. We've got economic policies that definitely aren't suiting the majority of Australians. And there's going to come a point where people have to say, maybe something needs to change here because voting the same way hasn't helped me. And if I don't change something or try to do something about it, then it's going to be more of the same instead of at least attempting to make something better. And that's the challenges that we're going to have in 2024. How far do people have to fall for them to attempt to try and change their ways and maybe vote for another party they've never voted before? Because a lot of people are saying, well, people in Australia especially, they're not broke yet. There's still too much money around. People are still in this mentality of, well, I'm doing it tough, but I'm not doing it that tough. So how far, and everybody has their threshold, how far is it that people are going to go until they reach that threshold of, okay, I'm really in deep now. Something has to change. I don't no longer support the way the governments are doing things, and something needs to happen. So everyone their threshold, and it's just a matter of time that people keep falling as times get tougher.
Yes, a like real GDP, like GDP per person, has declined. It's only inflated because of mass immigration, which is the point of the leaders to cover up that we're getting poorer actually in a per capita recession through the mass immigration Ponzi scheme. Now we've got our audience has trickled in. YouTube still plays tricks where it doesn't notify people properly that we're live. So make sure that double check on the WilmsFront channels if you've clicked the bell to allow for notifications. Shout out to our regulars, Wolfman's Blunt Razor, Paleoconservative Australian, Ron Nielsen, Dawn Browning. Good to see you all there. Now, let's go back to, well, the year before, 2022. It was the first year where, well, we weren't locked down. You're in Wollongong, so you were locked down along with Sydney in 2021. But we will go through the winners from the 2022 Unshackler Awards, and so the regressive of the year. I can't recall how many times he's won. Dan Andrews, now thankfully former Premier of Victoria. It was the best thing to happen to Victoria last year, the resignation of Dan Andrews. I mean, we all both celebrated and breathed a sigh of relief.
Is the option you have now any better though, Tim?
Well, Jacinta Allen, let me put it bluntly, she's not a cunt like Dan Andrews was. Like, remember his COVID press conferences? His menacing, threatening, hectoring. I mean, he was called Dictator Dan for a reason. I mean, Jacinta Allen, she does have a lot more friendly and feminine demeanor, because she does identify as the second female Premier of Victoria. So yes, even though she's from Dan's Socialist Left faction, she's a lot more bearable than Dan.
Okay, maybe slightly an improvement, I suppose. I mean, ideologically, there's not much of a change there, it seems.
So the winner of the 2022 Australian Unshackler of the Year was Harrison McLean, who is the organizer of Melbourne Freedom Rally. These awards, like where it's for the best people of the year. There's a bit of competition between because it's to reward those in the freedom movement. And a lot of people believe that Harrison had rigged it that year.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to these awards, if you have a lot of supporters getting on board and doing the votes, then it can appear that way. But I can say with confidence that we on our side never rig the votes. we make sure that it's fair, and we give everybody the option of voting. Sometimes a candidate, a nominee, can tell their supporters to vote for them, and that's why you get an influx of votes coming in for that particular candidate, whereas the others might not. So it can look very skewed at times, but it's definitely fair, and it definitely doesn't do us any good showcasing a result like that. So if I was rigging it, or if Tim was rigging it, we would make sure that the votes were a lot closer, so then it looked less rigged. So we definitely aren't rigging the votes, and we make sure that everyone has the chance to vote and get their votes in. So it's up to you guys.
So the international Unshackler, so this is freedom, patriotic politicians and international figures. So on the international stage, it was won by Pauline Hanson, who is nominated again this year. Harrison and Dan Andrews aren't nominated for their respective categories. And of course, Pauline was obviously important in 2022, being because you remember at the beginning of 2022, all of those protests in Canberra, thousands of people protesting to end all of the vax mandates. There's still amazingly some here in Victoria, but she was an important voice in the Senate. So was her colleague, Malcolm Roberts, and also Alex Antic and Jared Rennick and Matt Canavan.
Yeah, there is a lot of good nominees putting their names forward, and we've had a lot of good ones in the past as well. So it gives everybody, and we make sure that everyone has an option there. And we pick a range of candidates, all differing in their personalities and their positions. So that way, it gives people a clear choice as to who they might want to back.
The International Cuck of the Year award was won by former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, now Australia's ambassador to the United States. And before he took up the ambassador's job, he was co-chair with Malcolm Turnbull of Australians for a Murdoch Royal Commission.
Kevin Rudd, definitely someone that's always in the category nominee, and someone that really performs well in that category. I think him, along with Turnbull, like you're saying, I mean, they're really just the worst types of people, real parasite kind of mentalities, globalist, elitist mentalities, and some people that really can't look at the ordinary Australian and have a clue what anybody's going through. I mean, they're just in their own bubble.
The cis-white male of the year for 2022 was Barclay McGain, a young Queensland LNP member, though I think he's actually been kicked out now because, well, he's too based. I mean, he initially got viral back in, I think it was December 2019, when he was interviewing his mate Jake Scott at Schoolies, and he said that our sports players, they should be stand for our national anthem and celebrate our culture, not one that couldn't invent the bloody wheel. And he worked in the office of former federal MP Andrew Laming, who was forced to quit politics after those that defamatory accusations that he upskirted a woman. And Barclay also dressed up in, I think it was Halloween 2022, as Kyle Rittenhouse, which was absolutely based as. He's absolutely hated by the left because to them, he epitomizes white privileged Tory youth.
Well, he's definitely not going to be the last person to get booted out of the LNP, that's for sure. It seems to be a pattern that we're seeing more and more often. And I think the more and more that people think that the LNP can be saved and that they can be easily infiltrated within something that has been tried for so many years now, the more and more it seems like it's not going to work. It's not a possibility that anything good can eventuate from it, because as soon as you have an idea or a method of maybe putting something forward, the people in charge there already notice you and they're already one step ahead of you. That's just how the way that the system works high up in these parties. They know everybody that's coming in and they'll do their background checks. They'll make sure that there's nothing there that determines you being anything really right of center or right of center right is definitely a no-no. They're not going to allow it. So unless something drastically changes and some of the leaders in the party grow some balls, I don't think anything really in the near future is going to change. And I think the best people that you could really find is minor parties. I mean, unfortunately, they're not getting high enough votes, but there really isn't any other option at this stage.
The triggered feminist for 2022 was, again, Clementine Ford. She was back this year with a new book about saying no to marriage, which I guess she just wrote that to sort of get a bit of publicity. I mean, though she was the original what you call fright bat feminist. I think that was a term that was invented by Tim Blair. But remember back in the day, she used to tweet things like "kill all men," but then just say, "Oh, it's a joke, troll for shock value."
I've actually been through the shops and have seen the book while passing the book section. And when I saw it, I actually thought to myself, it's really strange coming from her to push such a view, because these days it could be argued that really, when it comes to marriage, women benefit a lot more than men from it. So I think a lot of men would actually think the same thing. I mean, not that they're against it when it comes to the concept of marriage, but just in reality, it just seems to be more and more harder for men, and it seems to be more of a benefit for women these days.
So the Australian Culture Warrior of the Year was Drew Pavlou. And again, this was a controversial win because he was like way out ahead. He's not nominated this year because it seems he's not an Australian Culture Warrior anymore. He's internationalist activist, and unfortunately for lots and lots of war.
Well, yeah, that's definitely something that on the freedom movement is clearly against. We're seeing them being really at the forefront against the wars overseas in Europe and the Middle East. So that's a no-go, and it's something that we shouldn't be getting behind. We really need to focus on our country and ignore anything that has happening overseas.
Although it was initially respected by, well, he's a lefty, but respected by a lot of people on the right, including myself, because of his anti-CCP activism, because so much of the left now, they're just apologists for authoritarian communist regimes. I like the CCP, who run the People's Republic of China.
Yeah, you do still get a segment of the left that are against, for instance, China, but normally they're against them for the wrong reasons. And I mean, this is something that really showcases the divide of the left and the right. Sometimes we can have the same views as someone of the left, but it's for the wrong reasons and the differing reasons there that we do have those views. So, I mean, it's one of those things that it can be it's a 50-50 chance if someone supports China or not. And I mean, you either support them or you don't support them. If you're not going to support them, at least don't support them for the right reasons. So that's how I would see it.
And the degenerate of the year, well, it was a deserving winner, Joffa Korf, who is the former head of the Collingwood Football Club cheer squad. In 2022, he pled guilty to sexually molesting a teenage boy. But because he pled guilty and got character references, he avoided jail. He was accused of sexually molesting another teenage boy who he met when he worked on an LGBT community switchboard, but there hasn't been court proceedings on that. And it's just typical of judicial systems, not just in Australia, at the West. They let these sex offenders without a day in jail, yet they lock up patriots for years on end.
And we've seen it so often as well. I mean, people showcase a different view that is considered to be somehow an extremist statement. People get put in jail, and then sex offenders get off the hook. It's a disgrace, and something really needs to change. But the system is flawed, unfortunately.
And the International Media Personality of the Year was won by Tucker Carlson. He was still at Fox in 2022. I hardly watch any Fox anymore. Though it's put to the top of the YouTube algorithm, but I certainly watch Tucker's on X interviews regularly, and of course he's founded the Tucker Carlson network. So it's certainly been Fox's loss.
It has, and it just goes to show that a lot of people say, well, it's all about the money for these companies. And it really isn't, because if it was all about the money, they would have kept him. So there's definitely other alternate agendas at play here. And more deep you look into it, the more you'll learn and realize that it's not a money motivated thing. As soon as you really get to the core, it's ideological. That's what it's based on.
And the Fake News Award for 2022 was the Daily Mail, which, of course, particularly during COVID, had horrendous clickbait, wanting people to be scared of the latest variant. Like, there's another new variant this year, JN1, which is actually even more mild than super mild Omicron. So they were a shocker during COVID. The lockdowns.
And we're all as bad as each other when it comes to media, really. I mean, there was no one. I mean, and a lot of people do cite Sky, but I mean, even them, they were really. It took them a long time for them to start to call out the COVID nonsense. I mean, straight away at the bat, right at the start, they were pretty much full into it as well. I mean, just in a more mild fashion. And so anyone that really rattles on about how good Sky is, I really get them to really think twice about Sky. I mean, it's like that controlled opposition that really isn't your friend. So,
all right. So that was last year. Now a few of the award categories have changed over the years. So we did have one of our first awards for many years up until 2020 was the Australian Patriot of the Year award, which we retired because at that stage the Patriot movement had they'd largely been purged from social media. And in 2020, it was the birth of the freedom activists. So it's why we launched the Australia Unshackler Award. I noticed that Paleo Conservative Australian asked why Thomas Sewell wasn't nominated in the Australian Unshackler category. He was nominated as for the Australian Patriot Award. I'd like to hear people's comments in the chat whether maybe next year they'd like to see that award resurrected.
yeah, hopefully we're going to be able to see a little bit more of a resurgence. I mean, for many years, ever since COVID, there really was a shift in activism. And that shift was from a nationalist front to a more freedom-focused, anti-lockdown, anti-COVID, and there were the new voice and the people that were really in the forefront on the media, really preaching it and so forth. And I mean, you still have your nationalists on Telegram and other on Gab. There still are people talking, but they're a little bit less in the public eye. And of course, that is for good reason, because there's a lot of them that have had so much trouble. I mean, there's been people that have had their bank accounts shut down. There's people that have gone to jail based on their ideology. A lot of people are saying that expressions have led to now years behind bars due to new hate speech laws. So there is a reason why those people are becoming a little bit more underground and not so much in the public sphere, because they're starting to think, well, we really, if we go out in public and we're doing what we're doing, not that they're not, because there still are at certain times, in particular in Melbourne, but all that can lead to is them getting shut down. Whereas it might be a better opportunity for them to, on the ground, start talking, going underground, bringing people in, preaching in a way that isn't so forefront in the public domain. And that way, at least they don't have a chance of getting remotely behind bars, at least now anyway, because laws can change again. So as soon as they come with, well, it's not so much what you're saying, now it's Fort laws. You know, if you're thinking something, you're automatically going to be behind bars. So, I mean, I really understand why it happened that way. And I think people will start to be able to catch on and preach that sentiment in the community. And I think it's something that just has to start small and slowly build up again. And for the right moment to happen is when all of a sudden, just like with COVID being the anti-lockdown fury and getting people that weren't activists all of a sudden on the streets protesting and so forth. It just takes the right event to happen for that sentiment to come back, and all of a sudden you'll get nationalists parading in the streets, protesting and stuff. It's just waiting on the right moment. And it will happen eventually, because the elites are really, they're really cocky. They're really cocky, and they think they can get away with anything. So as harder as they want to go on the left, then all of that does is really bring a hard right contingent up, and because something has to counter and balance it. So that's something that we will probably see in the next few years.
Well, we've just seen come into effect on January 8th the new hate symbols and anti-terror legislation, which bans the posting of symbols, including online, of listed terror organizations and Nazi symbols and gestures. So that's 1 year in prison if you, and the only defense is if you're a professional journalist for academic, artistic, or educational purposes, or if it's in opposition to the ideology or organization. And it's 5 years in prison for possessing violent extremist material, which it's a really broad category. And I'll go into this more detail tomorrow night on Tim's News Explosion, but and that was passed bipartisan, and so it's going to be it's dark times in Australia for free speech, and because if the state doesn't like you, well, they can lock you up for a long time now.
It's really scary. I mean, I think this, and I mean, digital ID is also another thing that would be among the two scary things that we're going into.
Oh,
On free
yes.
speech, yeah, I mean, on free speech though, I mean, yeah, okay, so these sort of groups are terrorist organizations. Who's determining that? I mean, is there any really proof or solid evidence that they've committed any terrorist attacks? No. I mean, yeah, okay, they've got views that are not with the mainstream, but I mean, at the end of the day, when you've got people like the ADL calling shots, I mean, of course, you're going to get people that are nationalist sentiments as branded as terrorists. But I mean, communists aren't touched. I mean, Antifa aren't touched. No, they're not. They're not extremists. They're fine. They're particularly fine. So, again, I mean, we really, when you get both major parties agreeing to these things, all that does is really show that they're working for the same boss. And that's what's really difficult for people to understand. They're really given this false sense of democracy that we've actually got a choice. And we really don't, because both parties are just as bad as each other. One might be slightly worse than the other, but they're ultimately getting called the same shots, listening to the same orders, and it's restricting our freedom of expression, our thoughts, our opinions, and anybody that questions them ultimately is going to get branded as an extremist. So it's going to be very hard times ahead.
Other former awards we did have were the best policies of the year and the worst policies of the year, but that didn't really work, and that's why we introduced the culture warrior and degenerate of the year. So, and obviously we'll get to this year's nominees, but culture warrior, that's for those who, well, are basically against the groomers, is the way to summarize it. And degenerates can be there's heaps of different degenerates now who sadly pervade our society. They can range from outright sex offenders and pedophiles to groomers and just disgusting people who pervade our media landscape.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people in the forefront that are against the woke nonsense, and that's really what the award is presenting. People that are really going after the ideological, the things that used to be not normal that is now considered the norm. So, I mean, there's a lot of those, and there's a lot of degenerates as well, as you said too. So, it's definitely going to be good going through all the new lists.
All right, well, let's get started. So the nominees for the 2023 Australian Regressive of the Year Award are the new Premier of Victoria, Jacinta Allen. She does have a nickname. It's Socialist Barbie, given that, well, she kind of does have that Barbie doll look. Her new deputy premier, Ben Carroll, is nicknamed Ken, since, like in the Barbie movie, he managed to hitch a ride to be the deputy premier.
Yeah, maybe 2 years ago she might have been more Barbie, but
the nominations closed before Anastasia Palaszczuk, which is what we're told by Polish Australians is the actual pronunciation of her name in Polish, Palaszczuk. But she's been telling us for years that it's Palaszczuk. She was known as the Chook during the COVID lockdowns because, well, she's got basically a chooky neck. I mean, look at that. It's like a chicken's neck there. So she resigned in December because, well, she was tapped on the shoulder by the unions who told her she was going to lose and you should resign, and they installed their man, Stephen Miles, in a replacement.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, all of the COVID heavyweight premiers now are gone. How convenient, but they've made their money and they're off to the private sector, I suppose.
And of course, Anthony Albanese, I mean, he starts the year. He's actually behind in, was the Roy Morgan poll had him behind. Freshwater today was 50-50. And, well, he hasn't made electricity bills cheaper by $275. They just keep going up. I mean, none of us have noticed our bills increasing, and of course he wasted pretty much most of last year pushing the voice referendum. Remember, he always said it's a very gracious and modest request.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see him winning a second term at this stage. I think it's going to be very difficult given what he's done and the damage he's created. So time will tell. But like I said before, I mean, unfortunately, the Liberal Party aren't really the best of options anyway. So it's going to be the least worst
And Linda Burney, the Indigenous Australians minister, I mean, she was a big asset to the no side, given that she couldn't make an argument unless it was written down on paper for her.
Yeah, she was terrible. I mean, they actually put her in hiding many times. They had to, when they done that big debate show that Jacinta Price actually won. She was supposed to be the spokesman on the yes side, and she refused to go on, and they replaced her with the Northern Territory senator. So you could tell straight away she has no clue, and she's given such an important role, unfortunately, within the ministry. So it's just really sad.
And Roger Cook, the new Premier of Western Australia, after Mark McGowan resigned because he said he was tired. Though he's not so tired that he can be on mining company executive positions. And of course, Roger Cook, he did the Yes campaign almost, well, you could say irreversible damage by those Aboriginal cultural heritage laws, where you basically, if you like for farmers or farmers to make any modifications to the ground, they had to consult some Aboriginal heritage consultant. It was it was going to be a huge racket, so they could to get their permission to modify their property. And well, to his credit, Roger Cook, he eventually tore the laws up and apologized for the hurt and confusion they caused, which has basically saved his premiership, because Labor's back ahead in the polls, and they're WA Liberals, they're still mediocre.
Yeah, well, I mean, if there's not a real opposition, then people are just going to vote for the duds that are currently in. That's what normally happens. And those laws there are very dangerous, and that's what we were going to get more of if the voice did end up getting up. So,
Cook, Bernie, and Alan are new fresh nominees, and so is Devere Abramovich, who's the chair of the Australian Anti-Defamation Commission, and is responsible for all of these bans, restrictions on free speech. I mean, he takes credit for the banning of the Nazi symbols and gestures, which, like, how can, like with the banning of the Nazi salute, the signs at the bus and tram stops still say "Hail bus" with the hand up. I mean, this is the absurdity of them. And he's also championed the banning of the trading of Nazi memorabilia. It's interesting that there was no such laws in Australia for 78 years after the end of the Second World War, yet Australia didn't become a Nazi state.
well, that's right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's people like these that are making people go towards a harder philosophy, because they're driven that way. I mean, Devere, like the panel are saying, a lot of the commenters are saying, is definitely the worst on the list, in my opinion. I think he's a disgrace. I think he's really a lot of the big cause of the problems that we're having in society here, where we're getting restricted on what we can say, what we can do. And at the end of the day, a free society, I mean,
because the new federal Nazi salute ban covers the internet, and I'm somebody who uses my hands quite a bit. I've got to make sure that I don't raise them at all. So in case one of the Unshackled's enemies decides to screenshot something where one of my arms is up in the air.
well, I've seen it many times with political leaders, for instance, that have just waved, but their arms actually look like they're doing a salute.
Yeah.
So
if you take the photo, it can look like. And I remember that a patriot was smeared back in 2019 at the rally against crime at St Kilda Beach. They accused him of doing the Nazi salute when he was just waving to the Antifa counter protesters saying, go away. And then there was, they accused a guy of being a Nazi when he did the Basil Fawlty mustache and walk. Now that's still okay. Basil Fawlty's still okay because it's artistic, and and that episode, The Germans. I mean, it's not pro Nazi. It's not even pro German. I mean, he constantly is upsetting the Germans by mentioning the war.
Yeah, I actually, just reading through the comments, someone made a really good point, and they mentioned how the dynamic of the left now turning onto the Zionist, that dynamic there is just so fun to watch. Actually, I really, I've just been enjoying that, because these people that are controlling and pushing these leftist agendas in the West, and then all of a sudden now they're having those same people basically go against their Zionist agenda. So I think it's just great that things can get turned that way.
Lydia Thorpe, she started the year by quitting the Greens because she wanted to be a progressive no to the voice. She was filmed outside a strip club at 2 a.m, calling a man a white little cunt, and said he had a small penis. And remember, she tried to block that float at the Mardi Gras. And then, of course, was her, remember that press conference where she had a meltdown after somebody made a video, a video calling themselves saying they were from the Warriors of the Convict Resistance, and mentioned her name, and then finished the video by burning the Aboriginal flag and doing the Nazi salute. And she had that press conference where she accused Albanese of wanting fascists to go and get her, accused him of inspiring that video.
Yeah, she's definitely got some mental issues. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I think she needs a lot of help. So, but ultimately, she's a clear example. She's a clear example of what the elites want the ordinary Australian to be. They all want people like her, just absolute brain dead, self-hating. I mean, she's the candidate of what they want all the people to be like, basically.
And she's also got daddy issues. Andrew Bolt interviewed her father, Roy Illingsworth. So she doesn't use his name. That's because the Thorpe is her mother's name, and that's the Aboriginal side. Roy Illingsworth he has British Celtic ancestry from my knowledge, and so that would obviously play a lot, into explains a bit about her behavior.
Well, yeah, I mean, when people are partly Aboriginal and partly white, and yet they always associate themselves with the Aboriginal side of things, but then they say that the white people are the ones with the privilege. Well, it doesn't really come across that way.
Thomas Mayo, who co-wrote the Voice to Parliament book. He co-wrote it with Kerry O'Brien, the former ABC 7:30 report host. Now he identifies as a Torres Strait Islander, though a lot of people have been looking at his ancestry, and yes, he is indigenous to the Torres Strait Islands because he was born there, and we're all indigenous to where we were born. So he is that it's disputed that he is actually of Melanesian Torres Strait Islander descent. He's got a mix of Filipino, Jewish, all sorts of different ancestries there. But yes, maybe not Torres Strait Islander Melanesian.
Yeah, not only that, not only was he not so correct about his origins, but he also was in praise of the Communist Party of Australia. And I mean, normally, if someone was on the right and they backed someone that was, say, pro-National Socialist, pro-fascism, whatever, I mean, that would have been an automatically lose your job, finished. That's it. But not a mention in the media, nothing about his communist roots. It's just crazy that people like Albanese and everyone else could back him and get away with it.
Professor Marcia Langton, again, another yes advocate who sunk the campaign when that audio leaked of her calling Australia a horrible racist nation, said that the No campaign was spewing racism. And then
Yeah, that's another. Yeah.
And then, of course, Stan Grant, who quit as ABC Q&A host. He said because of all of the racist trolling. And I mean, it's not racist to ask questions about how his skin managed to darken after, like, he's been in the media for 30 years, and certainly he had a much lighter skin 30 years ago. And a few people noticed that he didn't do up his top button one night on Q&A, and that was white, his chest.
So he must be getting too many fake tans then.
All right, let's go through the next ones. We'll try to speed this up a bit, otherwise we could go all night by talking about the worthy and unworthiness of the nominees. So the 2023 Australian Unshackler of the Year. Real Ruckshan, or now just goes by his actual name, Ruckshan Fernando. Senator Ralph Barbette of the United Australia Party, Senator for Victoria. The Aussie Cossack, Simeon Boykoff. Maria Z of Z Media. Economist John Adams of the Adams North Report on YouTube. Darren Bergworth, who is the founder of the Freedom Community My Place. Nick Patterson, who is the founder of the Australian Peacemakers and is still being persecuted by Victoria Police, accused of assaulting officers when he was trying to defend his friend during a lockdown protest in May 2021, when they just decided at the end to chase and attack him. So it's been going on for almost 3 years now, this case. Tricky Tritty, who is the founder of the Brisbane-based The People's Revolution, and also we have 2 elected Libertarian MLCs, formerly the Liberal Democrats. John Ruddick, a New South Wales MLC for the Libertarian Party, a Liberal Party, and David Limbrick, who has been a Victorian MLC since 2014, and really found his hit his stride in terms of COVID. Certainly, one of the silver linings is that turned a lot of people into libertarians, given that there was authoritarianism everywhere. So the Liberal Democrats, now Libertarian Party, experienced a massive surge, and also David Limbrick, he and John Ruddick have been outspoken on the gender transitions for minors that are being done in many cases without parental consent.
Yeah, they've done some good work, and they've also been really critical of the Aboriginal cultural heritage laws as well. which really is just a code word of erasing private property. So, I mean, things like that is where a lot of people can get behind, and the libertarians fighting on those particular issues rather than on the lefty woke stuff that some in the party might like to steer towards. Focusing on the right wing aspects is definitely a hit, and I think it's gained them a lot of a good following.
And the freedom rallies, they haven't been as prominent this year, but certainly on cultural issues, Ralph Babette, he has been excellent. Rukshan is still filming out on the street. A Simeon Boykov, he's been held up at the Russian consulate because he's wanted for allegedly pushing over this elderly Ukrainian man. Interesting that he's had you could call it a fallout with Avi Yemeni over Aussie Cossack having Syrian girl on his live streams.
Mm. And I mean, again, like it really just goes to show people that are supportive of freedom and who isn't. I mean, so anyone that has a problem with that and then goes out and tries to character assassinate them, I mean, it really shows their true agenda. I mean, we've got another few people on that list. I mean, Maria Z has been great and has definitely had a lot of good. She's been on the Stu Peters show, for instance. Really digs deep on issues that you'd never hear anywhere else. So really important stuff there. And I mean, John Adams, I've actually met him personally, and he's quite a good guy, and he's done a lot of work against ASIC and a lot of the corruption that he believes is taking place there. So a really good overall list there, and yeah.
It's hard to believe that he once worked for Arthur's in Adenis. I mean, one of the most lefty liberal politicians, but I guess we can conclude why he didn't last long in the liberal advisory circuit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody starts somewhere, so I mean, we have to forgive sometimes people's past there, but I mean, as they get older, they start to care a lot less following the mainstream, and they just want to. I mean, people have their thresholds. So at the end of the day, people could tag the line so much, but then when they get to a certain age, they're just not going to care anymore, and they're just going to say, "Well, this is what I believe, and I just don't care on my consequences, whether it comes to jobs, opportunities in the future." So even though when you're younger, it might affect people a little bit more, but if you're stable, financially stable, and you've got things going for you, then you're not really beholden to have to sell out at least to these organizations and these corrupt companies and the agendas, because you can say whatever you like without feeling consequence. You're not going to worry about someone firing you from your job and so forth. So best to keep in mind on the game. Make sure that you personally and your family can get in a position where you're independent and not dependent so much on the system, and then you can be a lot freer in many ways. And then no matter what you do and what you say, it's not going to be able to hurt you and affect you just as much. I mean, even with the COVID vaccines, for instance, a lot of people were worried about losing their jobs. If people were financially secure, then they wouldn't have had to have worried. They could quit their jobs and say, well, yeah, I don't have to have that job. I can last a few months without work. But many people were in that state, and that's what made it hard. So the best thing you can do is get into a position, you and your family, that is less dependent on the state and more free or independent, and be able to become self-sufficient.
And a first time nominee, Darren Bergwolf. So my place, it started in Frankston, which is near where I live, down on near the Mornington Peninsula, and which Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese will be visiting quite a bit with the Dunkley by-election coming out. But it spread branches all across Australia. And you know that he's making an impact when there's all these mainstream media hit pieces saying that they're intimidating local councillors at council meetings, or they're planning to run for local council in Victoria this year. Shock, the horror, seeking to make a difference through democracy.
I mean, sometimes council is where to start as well, because a lot of the wokey stuff happens on a local level. And if you can get in there on a local level, you can start to change culture. I mean, it really matters. I mean, yeah.
All right. So let's move on to the International Unshackler of the Year award. So we do have obviously perennial nominees and winners such as Pauline Hanson and Donald Trump. First time nominee Winston Peters, a leader of the New Zealand First Party and current Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand. The new New Zealand coalition of the National Party, led by Prime Minister Chris Luxon, also with New Zealand First and the Libertarian Act Party under David Seymour. It is basically reversing all of Jacinda Ardern's lefty progressive socialist policies, and New Zealand is, well, it's becoming based. I mean, I'm thinking of moving there.
Yeah, well, I mean, a change of government changes the country, as we know, and hopefully they continue being based and don't result to what the Liberal Party have become over here.
RFK Jr. So obviously, certainly, most ran first tried to run for the Democrat nominee, now running for independent. So he is most well known now for his opposition to Big Pharma, and also, well, we'll say other talking about other things you're not supposed to talk about, such as atrazine in the water that can turn frogs gay.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting to see what happens with RFK as a third-party nominee. And I mean, I've actually seen that there have been polls that have put him at around 20%, which is quite amazing. I mean, we haven't seen those levels since the 90s, when an independent done quite well then. So it is really going to be a good dynamic there. I mean, it's hard to say how the votes are going to go if it takes more from the right or the left. I mean, it's a bit of a balance there. I think he has support from both sides, so I don't think it's going to really hurt either candidate of Trump or Biden. So it'll be interesting to see how well he does.
Vivek Ramaswamy, who is running for the Republican nomination, and he has certainly smoked the others in the debates. He spoke about January 6th being an inside job. We weren't told the truth about 9/11. The Great Replacement is real. I mean, he's, walking proof of the Great Replacement.
Yeah, true. And I mean, this is something that we sometimes see where a non-white person seems to be a little bit more outspoken and based than the white people are. I mean, it's sad. It really is sad. But ultimately, we're in a position where sometimes white people feel that they'll be attacked if they come out and be outspoken, whereas people from a different background feel they have a little bit more sway. They could get away with a lot more. So ultimately, it's good to have people like him around. I mean, he's doing a very good job in the Republican Party against the candidates and pushing the right views. And it's just a shame that there's not many more people like that out there. That and that people are too afraid, and they're just pushing the elite kind of argument. I mean, all the other candidates going for the Republicans are really globalist candidates. So, I mean, it's just unfortunate.
Viktor Orban, the pro-family nationalist Prime Minister of Hungary. He is a perennial nominee as well. First-time nominee Javier Milei, the libertarian anarcho-capitalist president of Argentina. And now I know that there's a lot in the dissident right who don't like him, but I think he's doing an outstanding job making Argentina great again, and the economy is already picking up.
Yeah, I mean, both candidates are really well, and I mean, the Hungarian Viktor Orban, I mean, he's seen as probably the most based, I would say, or one of in Europe. I mean, he's done a really good job, especially on social issues there. So, yeah.
Geert Wilders, who we mentioned at the beginning, the Dutch election result. He is Party for Freedom winning the most votes. He's been in Parliament for 20 plus years, critical of mass immigration and the Islamization of the Netherlands and wider Europe. Elon Musk, the owner of X, formerly known as Twitter, who has really, I think, saved free speech online, which is why the governments are now passing laws against free speech, and Brexit champion and Reform Party president Nigel Farage, who took on the debanking the big banks this year and got the scalp of the Coutts bank CEO, who shut down his bank account, and he might not be a candidate for the Reform Party at the general election coming up this year, but Reform will certainly stand.
Yeah, well, true. I mean, these candidates have all done their part, and it will be interesting to see who wins the award.
All right, let's keep going through these. So the International Cuck of the Year award, and so again, there's a few perennial nominees. So Joe Biden, Emmanuel Macron, Justin Trudeau. I should say Emmanuel Macron, President of France, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, who I think has won this the most. Prince Harry, or should I say Harry Mountbatten Windsor, Kevin Rudd, Vladimir Zelensky, and we've got a few first-time nominees. So the state Victorian Liberal leader John Pesutto, the New South Wales state Liberal leader Mark Speakman, the federal energy minister Chris Bowen, and the now former governor of the Reserve Bank Philip Lowe.
Yeah, there's a lot of nominees there that are worthy of the award. As you said, Justin Trudeau has been the outstanding performer of the award. He's won most of them, except for I think once or twice, but he's won the most. Philip Lowe, I mean, he really is up there as well for the disaster that he's caused with the central banking system, of course, and all the rest. I mean, in their own way. They've all done their own part in played a very damaging role to society. So it'll be very interesting to see.
And of course, Mark Speakman, he supported the Voice, and of course, down in Victoria, John Pesutto expelled Moira Deeming from the Victorian Parliamentary Party room because he wanted to run an inclusive party, so he needed to exclude her. And Pele, Conservative Australian, is asking why isn't the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni on this list? Well, a cuck has to be a white male, and she's a female. She was nominated for the International Unshackler last year, but given that, well, she basically just gave up on border control and decided to go to that island where all those migrants were with the EU President Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, she's been a huge failure and disappointment. All right, let's keep going. So the cis white male of the year award. Now, first nominee, Peter Dutton. Nominations closed before Peter Dutton decided that he wanted to implement all these hate speech laws. So he's certainly not going to win. Sam Newman, the host of the You Cannot Be Serious podcast, where Richard Wollstonecroft, the Report from Tiger Mountain host, has become a regular panelist. He was Sam Newman labeled a racist for advocating that people boo the Welcome to Country at the AFL Grand Final, which sadly didn't catch on. Probably everyone was too scared to. Scared of being booted out to miss the grand final. Malcolm Roberts, a One Nation senator. George Christensen, a former LNP member for Dawson, currently One Nation member, and Substack author at Nation First. Novak Djokovic, or Novaks, as he is now known, the defending Australian Open champion and US Open champion. He won both Grand Slams the year after he was banned. So it just made him more hungry. He was not going to yield, and it was the Australian and US governments that blinked on their vax mandates. Jared Rennick, the Queensland LNP senator who lost pre-selection, so it's sad we're going to lose him in the next federal election, but it shows that he was doing a too good a job that the pre-selectors had to get rid of him. Matt Canavan, another LNP senator for Queensland. Alex Antic, Liberal senator for South Australia. Irish UFC champion and patriot Conor McGregor, first-time nominee as well. And Angry Anderson, first-time nominee, being a prominent no advocate for The Voice. There weren't too many in the arts and entertainment who came out against The Voice. The other was Kamal, but he couldn't be nominated because he's not cis white male. But also Angry Anderson, he's also an actor as well on Paulie Fenwick's shows Fat Pizza Housos and Darradong Council. And well, Rose Tattoo is a great Aussie band, so don't play the John Farnham songs anymore. Play the Rose Tattoo, We Can't Be Beaten, and Angry Anderson's Bound for Glory.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Angry has always been a great person. He's always been a conservative. A lot of people initially thought, well, oh yeah, he would be a Labor guy, but it's not the case actually. Like, I mean, he's old school working class based, but definitely not in the form of the modern Labor Party. So more of a conservative these days, and many other good candidates there too. I mean, really, there is some decent politicians still around. I mean, they can only get away with so much, unfortunately, and they know that there is limits in what they can and can't do. And it's really sad that they're able to do that, but they still play a good role. And this is the thing, right? So they know exactly what's going on. They give hints, and then they let the people like us do our research and then dig deeper and then figure it out for ourselves what's really going on. So even though these people here, a lot of people will say, yeah, but they're not mentioning this, they're not mentioning that. You have to really understand the dynamic here, because these people have brought a lot of people that not normally are onto the fold into our group. And those people have done their own research, got into more harder stuff, looked into, people like Alex Jones and all that sort of stuff. And then they've been able to come up with those views that these politicians, the good ones, might even know is true, but they just know they can't get away with saying it. So they do play a role, but ultimately we have to dig deeper and basically do our own research and go further with it.
And also, it's good to have a sportsman stand up for his nation in Conor McGregor, because the whole world knows who he is. And Ireland, they're being invaded the fastest out of any of the European nations at the moment. I mean, it's only the Republic of Ireland only has about 5 million people in it. So a million illegal migrants would drastically change the country. Well, its most popular boy's name's Muhammad in the Republic of Ireland now.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been a lot of issues there at this stage, and there's people speaking out about it. Obviously, they're getting torn to shreds for it, but that's one of those countries, because it's so small, it's going to be very easy to infiltrate. So that's the thing, you know, like people have to understand that it only takes a couple of decisions for a country to completely change. And once it's changed, it's not going to go back. I mean, it just can't, unless something happens in the future where someone arises and then has to go through very extreme processes in making it go back. But that's the problem, right? Like once you change something, it's very hard to change it back. And they know this. They know this, and that's why they do it. So we have to be resistant to this sort of change because it's not a good change. It's a bad change, and it doesn't work. And it just completely destroys the country. I mean, the culture of the country, the heritage, everything. So it's really important. I mean, people can bang on about colonialism, but at the end of the day, these same people that are against colonialism are destroying the Western countries in the same kind of mentality. So that's where we are right now, and we have to make sure that we don't end up turning these countries into shitholes.
All right, let's move on to the next category, the triggered feminist of the year. And of course, we have our perennial nominees such as Van Badham and Sarah Hanson-Young, the Green Senator for South Australia, last year's winner Clementine Ford, who also has daddy issues, but amazingly has a male partner and a son, though she still can't help but be a good maternal mother to her son. It's made her mellow a bit. Magda Shabansky, who you remember last year, she was asking people to collect alleged anti-voice misinformation so that she could collect it for later for some sort of dossier. Meghan Markle, Prince Harry's wife, and of course, well, she doesn't look black at all, but she cries racism. She had the podcast with Spotify, and they had the Netflix series as well. Just awful people. Lisa Wilkinson, who's been off our TV screens for this year as she fights Bruce Lehrmann's defamation case in the federal court, which we should get a verdict on very soon. And first-time nominee has been, her interview subject, Brittany Higgins, who accused Bruce Lehrmann of raping her. It was a mistrial, but there wasn't a retrial because the now disgraced ACT DPP Shane Drumgold said it would be too traumatic for her, but she's been able to, testify at the federal court stand quite well. Another nominee, first-time nominee, Mean Girl Katie Gallagher, who she did admit that David Shiraz, Brittany Higgins' now fiance, did tip her off that the Brittany Higgins story was going to break. Louise Milligan, ABC Four Corners reporter, who she won some journalism award for accusing George Pell of being a pedophile, which was overturned unanimously by the High Court. This year, her most her big story for Four Corners was, why isn't there any openly gay AFL male players? Which, I mean, who cares? And speaking of gay, Patricia Karvelis, she's the golden feminist lesbian of the ABC, host of ABC Radio National, now Q&A. She even got to guest host Insiders. One of our commenters, Lady of Shalott, got retweeted by Patricia Karvelis for saying to her on Twitter X, "I bet your coming out to your Greek family went down like a Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin."
Yeah, that would have been a funny one. Would have been a funny one to see. Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of terrible people. Good choices for the list, that's for sure. I mean, I'm looking at the list and I'm thinking, surely Brittany Higgins, I mean, Damage, I mean, she has to be definitely at the top of my radar, I think.
Certainly Patricia Carvelis for me, just because, and she was also terrible during COVID. She double masked on a plane and said it was romantic with her that she and her wife, who looks like Eminem, rat tested each other every day. This pandemic just keeps on giving. Like, I don't know, is that some sort of kinky lesbian thing for them?
I never seen The Wife, and I'm gonna, as soon as I finish the show, I'm gonna Google it. So
Yeah, yeah, looks like Eminem. So there's always other people say with lesbian couples, there always seems to be one who looks like a woman and one who looks like a man.
yeah.
So the Australian Culture Warrior of the Year award, and again, there's a theme with those who were vocal against The Voice, and also against the transgender agenda. So Mark Latham, who won it last year, who resigned from One Nation, and he is currently being sued by the Sydney Independent Alex Greenwich for replying to Alex Greenwich a tweet which called him disgusting. And Mark Latham said, "Disgusting. What about putting putting a dick in a guy's ass and covering it in shit?" And Pauline Hanson demanded he apologize for that, which Mark Latham didn't, because he doesn't apologize. Warren Mundine, a prominent Indigenous campaigner against The Voice. Moira Deeming, who she was smeared as being a neo-Nazi by, or she's suing John Prosciutto for that smear, the Liberal leader who expelled her from the parliamentary party room. Kiralee Smith, the director of Binary Australia, who's fighting another intervention order against a prominent trans woman YouTuber who plays soccer in the Women's New South Wales League. Augusto Zimmerman, who is a legal scholar from Western Australia, originally from Brazil. Jacinta Price, the Country Liberal Party senator for the Northern Territory, again, prominent no advocate, as was Anthony Dillon, a academic and author who I interviewed on WilmsFront. Gary Johns, who is a federal Labor MP for Petrie in the 80s and 90s. Now he is, well, very much a cultural conservative, and was called a racist for saying that if Aboriginal people want to find their voice, learn English, and there should be a blood test to determine Aboriginality for welfare benefits. First time nominee, Pastor Andrew Sedra of Echo Church. So he is against all of the gender LGBT agenda. He was called a vile homophobic pastor by the Daily Mail, which he wore as a badge of pride. And Kobe Thatcher, a prominent Twitter X user who gained gained a lot of traction during the FIFA Women's World Cup by saying, "I hope the woke Matildas lose."
Yeah, again, I mean, there's some good options there. For me, though, I mean, someone like Latham never fails to disappoint. I mean, if you're getting basically demoted from One Nation, a party like One Nation, that really says a lot. And I mean, that must mean that this guy really is like based as like. I mean, this is someone that he gets demoted from a party that is on the, well, not really far right, but you know what I'm saying, like further right than the Liberals. So, you know, it really highlights where he's at in his mind, and the mentality, the ideology he has is really clear. And it's great to see. Like, I mean, someone at his age, of course, He just doesn't care anymore to follow these lines.
He didn't lead One Nation to a successful result in the New South Wales state election. He tried to court the Indian Australian vote, which didn't translate to extra votes.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem. I mean, people keep on branching out to try and collect more and more votes, but the authenticity is where it's at. Authenticity means that that's where people start to respect you, and when you get votes coming your way. It's better to make sure that you cater to your base than to abandon base and try and collect new votes. And I mean, this is why the Liberal Party is in such a shambles, because rather than catering to its conservative base, it keeps on trying to go to the left to pick up more votes, whereas then people in the Conservatives are then dropping their votes from the Liberal, and they're losing a lot more votes that way than gaining them. So ultimately, people have to look at who are they representing and represent them genuinely.
All right, we've got 3 more categories to go. So there was no shortage of nominees to choose from for the Degenerate of the Year award. Last year's winner, Hunter Biden, son of President Joe Biden, who is well-known cocaine addict and also a sex addict as well. Another repeat nominee, Dylan Mulvaney, who was known this year, the trans TikTok influencer, for sinking the sales of Bud Light, who made Bud Light cans with her face on them. Also, first-time nominees, Philip Schofield, former ITV This Morning host, resigned after it was revealed that he'd been having an affair with the teenage runner for the show, Matthew McGreevy. He got away with it for 3 years by coming out as gay, using the Kevin Spacey defense. I now choose to live as a gay man. Hugh Edwards, former BBC 10 o'clock newsreader, who paid a crack-addicted teenager £35,000 for explicit photos and videos, but is apparently still a national treasure because he's the only one who could tell the British people that the Queen had died because he was able to read an auto cue well. Penny Wong, the Foreign Minister of Australia, who is marrying her longtime female partner now. Yumi Steins, of course, has written those sexual education books aimed at children. Welcome to Sex, Welcome to Your Boobs, Welcome to Your Period, and Welcome to Consent. And there is former WA Nationals MP James Haywood. He was found guilty of child sex abuse and disqualified from Parliament, found guilty of 4 charges of indecently dealing with a girl between when she was 6 and 8. It was really horrific. What he was found guilty of doing to her. Sam Smith, a musician who now goes by they, them pronouns, calls himself not a fisherman, a fisher they, and of course is fat but decides to dress in skimpy outfits. There was that music video where he gets golden showered upon and perform that song "Unholy" at the Grammys with a satanically dressed dance troupe. Reuben Kaye, who offended Christians and Muslims by saying that he loved Jesus because he got nailed for 3 days and came back for more, and also did an ABC show talking about boys wearing makeup. And of course, David Van, the now independent Victorian senator, kicked out of the Liberal Party by Peter Dutton, for alleged sexual harassment of Lydia Thorpe and Amanda Stoker, former LNP Queensland senator, and also was chatting up women on Instagram. And one of his pictures was "Call Me Senator Six-Pack."
Yeah, there's another group of individuals that are definitely catered for Degenerate of the Year award. I mean, personally, for me, I would have to go with the drag queen on the project because I think that was such a massive moment. And I remember the outrage that was going through people at the time when they saw that. And being a Christian myself, it was pretty terrible on mainstream TV. 6:30, whenever it is that the project's on, 7 o'clock. For such a person to have come out with that. And even when there was a backlash, it seemed like the news networks weren't really taking it serious at the time. But I mean, yeah, there's many other great candidates there too. That I mean, Yumi with her books. I mean, yeah, many candidates. What are your thoughts on it, Tim?
Oh, well, I cover a lot of British news because we allowed a lot of British expats like Lady of Shalott and Dawn Browning, who are fans of the show. The UK never short, it seems, of degenerate politicians and TV hosts. But both Philip Schofield and Hugh Edwards, they claimed mental health and, everyone, lays off, even though their conduct, well, degenerate to say the least. Oh, we just lost something there. I think we're back now.
Yeah. So I pretty much covered it all on this award. So yeah, I'm good.
All right, let's go into international media personality of the year. And this award category, there's the only first-time nominee is Elijah Schaefer, host of Slightly Offensive. Now, living in Australia, married an Australian woman and has a Australian son. So does his Slightly Offensive program from his home at Tweed Heads, just south of Queensland. Stu Peters, Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, Tim Paul, Paul Joseph Watson, Katie Hopkins, Russell Brand, Luke Radowski of wearechange.org, and Candace Owens of the Daily Wire, who Ben Shapiro, despite being the founder, couldn't get her fired, even though she went against his neocon defense to the hilt of Israel and wanting the US to fund endlessly whatever Israel does.
Yeah, I think this is a standout award. I mean, there's so many great candidates here. I mean, when you're looking at what they've been able to contribute and the content that they've provided to people. I mean, there's been normies that have basically come over because of these people. I mean, Candace Owens has done a lot in regards to feminism and exposing that other conservative issues. I mean, Russell Brand's done a lot on the vaccine and the COVID issue.
So what do you think of, some people might say he should be in the degenerate category, not the international media personality.
Yeah, I mean, I get the point. I mean, as a media person, I would say that he's pretty successful and he's definitely brought a lot of people that were previously left leaning over to the freedom hold and to embrace a lot more conservative ideals. So I think that he's done a good job in that. And I mean, Tucker, of course, Stu Peters has done a remarkable job for many years now. And Alex Jones, like always, he's done a good job too. And I would actually, for anyone interested, I would actually get them to look at the latest interview that he's done with brother Nathaniel, and that's very interesting and covers a lot of things that people have been mentioning in the comments. So yeah, I mean, even that audience there and that commentator there has come a long way over the years. So people are starting to notice what's going on, and people are getting there slowly and slowly. And we're starting to see, because of these commentators, these media personalities, they've brought so many people over and have woken so many people up. And that's why I think this category is so important.
And Tim Pool's Timcast, well, it's even bigger now than CNN and MSNBC. And Luke Rudowski of WeAreChange.org is basically his permanent co-host now, long-time libertarian. His memes are also excellent. Paul Joseph Watson, he's got a new website, modernity.news, and he's also now a father-to-be at age 40, so congratulations to him. And also my favorite, Katie Hopkins, her vlogs are just hilarious, and also her shows on TNT radio are also excellent as well. She's also hilarious with her Silly Cow tour.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting because there's so many people. And I mean, again, these people might not go as far as you want them to, but they're doing enough to make people think. And that's what's really important. And as soon as start people be thinking, they start to do their own research again, and they start to then go deeper down the rabbit hole, which is where we want people. We want people to really dig deep and find information, and really go away as far as they can from the mainstream way of thought. So they've done a really good job in doing that.
And our final category, the 2023 Fake News of the Year Award. And well, we were just talking about the project, how they posted the degenerate Ruben K. I mean, I can't believe it's still on the air. I mean, it hardly rates. The New Zealand version got axed, which is lucky for them, but we're still stuck with it. CNN, which used to be a news channel, but now is just Trump derangement network. Also, hardly anyone watches. 7 News, they are still the worst when it comes to COVID hysteria, still pushing it. ABC News, well, during the voice referendum, it was pretty much a 24/7 pro-voice. 9 News, and also, well, they're called the 9 newspapers now, but a lot of us still call it the Fairfax papers, The Age and Sydney Morning Herald. I mean, Nick McKenzie, obviously, back in 2022, did that hit piece on the NSN through that those secret, sneaky secret recordings. The Guardian, news.com.au, which is News Corp, so also owns Sky News. Crikey, whose worst reporter is Cam Wilson, basically an Antifa fellow traveller. The New Daily, which is partly funded by industry super funds, and SBS News promotes the globalist agenda and also runs the National Indigenous TV service.
Yeah, there's a lot of good propaganda networks there. So it's going to be hard to pick from because they're all as bad as each other. So yeah. I mean, normally the ABC fares pretty well, and CNN has done well too in the years. Guardian, of course. So it's going to be hard to pick from, but ultimately it could be one or the other. It's really hard to pick from. It's a mixed bag on this award, really. Yeah, no clear standouts.
All worthy nominees. Well, thank you, Damien, for joining me tonight and helping to, well, get Unshackled Productions going for 2024. You'll, of course, put out a video on Australia Day announcing the winners as per tradition. And as we mentioned, there's both the US presidential election and UK general election. We've got the Queensland, ACT, and Northern Territory state election. And of course, you're more than welcome to join us for Unshackled live coverage, which we'll certainly be doing for the US, UK, and certainly for at least the Queensland state election.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to, and hopefully those elections go our way. And I'll be looking forward to present the awards on Australia Day. And thanks to all the people that have listened in tonight and that have commented. And hope to catch up with you guys soon.
Yes, and as I said, our audience loves you. Fairly conservative. Why isn't Damien a co-host? But as I said, we'll certainly be speaking more with Damien throughout the year. So take care. I mean, I know that we'll all be watched now with these new laws. So make sure you stay safe.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, we have to be very careful, but that's why we have to. I mean, I try and allude what I'm trying to say to the commenters there, and they know what I'm talking about. But I have to be really careful. I don't want to be going to jail, right? So
yeah, don't catch the bus.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, take care.
All right, thanks, Mark.
All right, everybody, that brings us to the end of the first WilmsFront for 2024. And the good news is that WilmsFront will be back same time next Sunday, 9 p.m. Melbourne time, where my guest will be Ben Shand, who formerly was the Dusty Bogan, but now his channel goes by the name the Bogan Christian Lobby. He has been spearheading the Australia Month campaign, which I will talk about more tomorrow on Tim's News Explosion. Because rather than be on the defense about Australia Day, why not be on the offense, given that January 1 is Federation Day in 1901? Have the whole month Australia Month. After all, there's a whole month for LGBT pride. He was on Dusty Bogan was on Elijah Schaefer's Slightly Offensive live stream on Saturday. So it's the episode after the great debate that Elijah hosted with Gavin McGuinness and co. So yes, Tim's News Explosion is still Mondays, 9 p.m. So make sure that you click the bell to allow for notifications on the WilmsFront channels. Make sure you also, for all videos, give a like and comment below, because it all helps with the algorithm. I will be announcing the winners on Australia Day, Wolfman's Blunt Razor. So yeah, WilmsFront started on Sundays last year. It used to be on Thursdays, but that's now the Joel, Blair, and Tom night, and I'm certainly not going to live stream at the same time as them, because I want to watch them as well. Some good news is that I was able to get a better deal on the server for the Unshackled.net. So I will be able to keep publishing new content on the Unshackled.net. I was able to get a really good deal. I got out of a terrible deal. But if you want to help with our operating expenses, please support the Unshackled at the unshackled.net/membership. So we have bronze for $5 per month, silver for $10 per month, gold $25 per month, platinum $50 per month, or you can send off a one-off donation to the unshackled.net/donate. And you can also save on memberships by purchasing yearly as well. So please consider supporting us. I know that cost of living is tight at the moment, and of course with inflation our operating expenses continue to. You keep saying that, Paleo Conservative Australian, you need to sign up. Go ahead and do it. Do it now while you're on the show. I need to be a bit more Avi, who is constantly asking for money. He needs money because some person is suing him who has the same name as a dead Palestinian terrorist. So he's asking for legal funds for that. I will certainly, if I have more resources, then I'll increase my reach as well. Now, I will see you all tomorrow night. Now, the Theorists with Andy Nolch won't resume until February, as will my weekly appearances on Reality Check Radio's breakfast program with Paul Brennan, which I give his New Zealand audience an update on what has been happening in Australia. I'll be recording a fresh report from Tiger Mountain episodes with Richard Wollstonecroft later this week, and make sure that you tune in if you don't already to Sam Newman's You Cannot Be Serious podcast. If you want to hear more of Richard, because he's now a regular panelist there. He impressed Sam so much when he went in to promote MUFF, the Melbourne Underground Film Festival, that Sam decided he'd be a regular panelist since Don Scott decided to quit because he didn't want to be associated with Sam's anti welcome to country views, so he decided to be a sook and quit. I mean, he's basically Don Scott. If you listen to it, I mean, it was basically he's at Joe Biden levels of senility now. Sam Newman was always very impatient with Don, always being slow, not speaking into the microphone, eating biscuits on air. But yeah, he's still got plenty of friends. Sam Newman on his You Cannot Be Serious podcast. It's always a hoot. Sam Newman, well, he's not an official AFL legend because the AFL has to make you a legend, but he's an AFL icon. That's for sure. And one of the last Australian sports personalities who's anti-politically correct, anti-woke. Now, I am still sending out the Unshackled email, so make sure if you haven't joined the email list. I think that I've mentioned everything now, so I'll see you all tomorrow night. There'll be so much to cover, beginning with, well, as I said, Australia Month, that terrorist car bombing attack on Tim Lutz, who operates the NSN gym in Sunshine just before Christmas. Victoria Police haven't hunted down the terrorists who did that to his pregnant wife's car yet. We'll also have a UK-US report as well, because there's been a lot going on, a lot that is good, very positive developments, and some which we certainly keep an eye on. So we shall see what 2024 brings, but it's going to be a wild year. It certainly has already been. And as I said to Damien, we've all got to watch ourselves now, because there's those new laws that have passed, and certainly they'll certainly be looking to make an example of somebody. Now, Australia Day, I will be celebrating at the Doncaster Bowling Club. So Richard Wollstonecroft's mate Damien Richardson, who of course ran for the Senate, is promoting this. So Damien was recently on Sam Newman's podcast as well. Remember, because the Melbourne CBD is basically a no-go zone with Invasion Day protesters now. So it's $25 for a ticket. I will certainly be going. Andy Nolch is going as well. So there'll be a lot of familiar faces. So I think you can, so the try booking link, I think you can do credit card or PayPal. So I'd all like to see you there. I'll promote it tomorrow night as well. But certainly that is where I'm going to be. And certainly I would invite all of you to come along as well. So good night, everybody. And I'll see you all tomorrow night. Stay safe and take care.
Thanks for tuning in to WilmsFront. Visit timwilms.com to view the archive of episodes, and keep visiting the Unshackled.net to view all our shows, and to keep up with the latest real news and analysis.